What's happening, everybody? Appreciate you checking in. All right, Mark Davis and Tom Brady decided to hit us with some breaking news to start out the weekend, and we have officially signed Pete Carroll, former Seahawks Super Bowl winner, former national champion winner over at USC. We decided to sign him officially today to a 3-year with a 4-year team option to be the next Las Vegas Raiders head coach. And even though this news can come with some excitement, there are also some big concerns as well with this hire, and I'm definitely going to get into it. I'm going to hit you with my pros and cons with this head coaching hire. And the way that I want to start this out is there's definitely some pros without question. And I don't want to necessarily say cons. I think it's more about question marks. I have a lot of questions as it relates to this head coaching hire. And the thing is, a lot of these questions we won't find out in the very beginning or even maybe even past the first season. I think a lot of the questions that I have is it does surround his age, but not specifically because of his age, but what comes with that. And so again, it's not necessarily cons, but it's more question marks that I have. And unfortunately, I do think that a lot of these questions won't be answered immediately. And we're gonna have to see how this really does play out. And so how did we get here? Right. Obviously, I think the moves that Mark Davis and Tom Brady made to start this whole head coaching cycle in GM search was we got rid of Antoniopierce and we got rid of Tom Telesco. And I think that they paved the way to take a full swing at Ben Johnson, and that didn't work out. Didn't work out at all. Ben Johnson decided to go over with the Bears. I think that was his choice originally. And so even though we had a virtual interview with Ben Johnson, he didn't want to come here. He didn't want the Raiders as much as he was at the top of our list. We weren't at the top of his, unfortunately. And so I think the next big swing that they were going to take was at Pete Carroll. All the reports were stating it. And as it stands right now, it looked like they are able to lock that up. As long as he signs on the dotted line, obviously we just kind of had that scare of Spytek, but as long as he signs on that dotted line, Pete Carroll will be the next Raiders head coach. And so first and foremost, in the comment section down below, let me know, what are your thoughts on this hire of Pete Carroll? Again, I'm going to give you my pros and cons, but let me know in the comment section down below what your initial thoughts are. Now, I'm going to hit you with the pros and cons, and I'll start with the cons. We'll end with the pros. We'll end this video on a high note. And the first con or question mark that I have is just pure stability, right? We have been changing coaches on an average of every 2 years. We have switched up head coaches. And so for the last 20 plus years, I think it's the last 24 years, we have averaged a coach every other year. And because of Pete Carroll's age and the uncertainty of just how long he's going to be able to take on this job and do it efficiently at his age, are we going to find ourselves in a year, maybe even two, now he decides that he needs to step away? And this still presents the concern of just stability. maxxcrosby, he's went on his own podcast. I think he's done a couple of interviews. Is that one of the things that he's looking for is stability. Also, he wants to win as well, but also stability. And I understand that, because that's one thing that this Raiders organization has not had over the years is stability. And there's a lot of question marks at Pete Carroll's age as to whether or not he's going to be able to bring that stability, as well as bring somebody in to be his successor and continue for us to have potential stability moving past Pete Carroll when he's no longer with us, because we all know, because of his age, this is a temporary job with him. We signed a 3-year with an optional 4, and who knows if he even reaches the 3rd year. And so stability is definitely one big question mark that I have. And the other thing that you have to mention is that this isn't the biggest hire. The hiring job to determine the future of our organization and this team isn't just with the head coach. And now what is even probably more important than the head coach is who the assistant coach is, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator. Who is that going to be? Who is Pete Carroll going to bring in? Because those are more than likely going to be the next head coach of this football team when Pete Carroll decides to move on. And so the job isn't done. And this is probably the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time that I can remember that probably the coordinator hirings, the hiring of the offensive defensive coordinator is probably bigger than the actual hire of the head coach. And so it still remains to be seen who he is going to bring in. Make sure you turn on those notifications, because later today I'm going to go live and kind of chop it up and kind of get into more detail as to what my opinion is of this hire, as well as who the coordinators will potentially be moving forward. So make sure you hit that notification bell, because I am going to go live later today. And then adding on to the importance of who our offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator are going to be is you got to question Pete Carroll's coaching tree. Okay. Because here's the thing, is a lot of people talk about, oh, he's got such a great coaching tree or extensive coaching tree. And I question that. right? Probably the biggest name that has come from his coaching tree is possibly Dan Quinn, right? Dan Quinn, he did make it to a Super Bowl with the Falcons. He's doing a very good job year one with the Washington Commanders. And so you got to think that maybe Dan Quinn is probably the biggest name coming off of his coaching tree. But then outside of that, you have Dave Canellis, which is the head coach over with the Carolina Panthers. Remains to be seen just how well he's going to do. Some people throw Gus Bradley in there, but not sure how you can. Gus Bradley failed when he was with the Jaguars, and I don't think he's a very good defensive coordinator either. When he was with us, he was one of the most conservative defensive coordinators I think I've ever seen. And so, to me, when you look at Pete Carroll's ability to prep coaches for for their next step when it comes to the coaching ranks, he hasn't really had much success. And so, if we're relying on him to prep the next coach, I have a lot of question marks on whether or not he can do that. And then my next question mark, big question mark, is even if he has the ability to prep somebody, is he going to be around long enough to prep that next person? Because here's the thing is you can build a good coaching staff. That's actually one of my pros, but you can build a good coaching staff. But the thing is that there's a reason why if you bring in veteran coaches that were ex-head coaches, right? Let's just, again, I'm maybe skipping ahead, but you could say like a Doug Peterson or something like that. You know, they're not very far removed from being a head coach. And so they need, so one of the things that I would like to see with a head coach, a former head coach that gets a second chance or maybe even a third chance, I want them to be able to have some time at being an assistant head coach, learn from somebody else and make sure that you can kind of get that experience and learn from the mistakes that you made in the past. And with Pete Carroll being as old as he is, if he's gone 2 years from now, is that enough time for him to prep or give some really good advice and learning experience to the next guy? And now, mind you, that's a veteran. Now, what happens if he brings in a young head coach? What happens if he brings in someone as an offensive coordinator, a young mind? And then Pete Carroll steps away in the next year or two, and maybe even 3. Is that enough time for him to prep a young offensive coordinator, a young defensive coordinator, and be fully prepared for this job and leave this Raiders team in good hands? That's one of my biggest question marks with him is one, can he develop somebody? Because his track record hasn't been too great. And then what happens if he leaves early? Does that give him enough time to prep the next guy, especially if it's a young up and comer? That's one of my biggest question marks. Again, I'm not saying he can't do it, but it definitely is a question mark moving into the future after Pete Carroll. And then my last con/question mark is obviously his age. He's 73 years old. He's going to be 74 when the season starts. And the thing is this isn't an office job, right? It's not an office job. This is a high energy job. And we all know that he does have the energy. He has been known for the energy that he brings to the sideline, to the locker room, right? And players feed off that energy. But I'm sorry, once you pass 60 years old, even 65 years old, it goes downhill very quickly. He's got to be on that practice field every single day, hyped up, ready to rock. He's got to be on that sideline. He's got to travel with the team. He's got to be in the office early mornings, late hours. He's 73, 74 years old. That is mind-boggling to me that a guy at that age can continue to do that. Now, if he can, more power to him. Like, I hope he can, and I hope he rocks it like he did over Seattle. But you'd be crazy to not question whether or not he can still bring that same energy. Not today, because it's okay if he can bring it today, but can he bring it in year 2 and year 3 and possibly year 4 if he gets that option? Those are the biggest question marks, because the worst thing that you can do is all of a sudden, if you do start to kind of feel that downgrade in that energy, right? You just don't feel it, but you still try to hang on. That downgrade in energy can transfer to the team. And so I hope he can bring it. I hope he can sustain that energy through the entire time that he is here with the Raiders. The thing is, man, I've coached this game for 23 years. I coached at the high school level. And the thing is, the time and energy and the wear and tear on your body, the exhaustion of just coaching at the high school level, times that by 100. And then you got the NFL. And I was exhausted as a 40-year-old, as a guy in my late 30s. I was exhausted coaching just at the high school level. I can't imagine the time, the energy, just the exhaustion you feel at the NFL level, and to do it at 74, 75, 76 years old. That is crazy to me. And so again, I hope he can do it, but it definitely raises a ton of question marks in my mind. So let me know in the comment section down below, what are your question marks or cons when it comes to Pete Carroll? Let me know in the comment section down below. Now I'm going to get to the pros. Okay, I'm going to end this video with the pros, but before I do, if you can, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on those notifications. My next giveaway is at 4,500 subscribers, so if you want to be included, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But again, I'm going live later today, so hit that notification bell so you do not go live. Chop it up with us in the chat room, and we can engage, and we can dive definitely a lot deeper into the hiring of Pete Carroll, as well as maybe some of the coaches that we think he might be interested in bringing on. And so let's jump to the pros. Now, the first pro I'm going to talk on is, you can't deny that he is the most prepared and ready for this moment, for this position, for this locker room, right? With his extensive history, with him being a former Super Bowl champion coach, he is ready for this moment, and he knows what to do. He's going to come in and he's going to hit the ground running without question. Right. And he's also a culture changer. He is going to be able to mold this locker room and kind of change the culture. Players are going to be excited seeing him in the building. And if all the reports are true that he still has that energy, even at 73, 74 years old, he is going to come in and change just the dynamic and the energy in this locker room. So you can't question that. That is what I think I'm probably most excited about, is that you bring that winning culture into the locker room right from the beginning. And so that is definitely a pro, in my opinion. And my second pro is, without question, he's going to be able to build a good coaching staff. He's going to bring in some veterans. Again, you can throw guys' names out there like maybe a Doug Peterson. We interviewed Riverboat Ron Rivera. He came in for an interview. Maybe they're prepping to possibly see, is that a defensive coordinator that we can bring in to pair up with Pete Carroll? You bring in some of these veteran head coaches that have well-respected names across the league, you're going to catch the attention of these young players. We have one of the youngest rosters in the NFL. You're going to catch the attention of these players, and they're going to instantly have respect for these coaches walking in the building. Now, you can also bring in a young coordinator to kind of prep him and be the successor to Pete Carroll. Depends on kind of what route he wants to take. But in the very beginning, you just know that Pete Carroll's going to be able to bring in some very credible names and build a very solid coaching staff. And this, I do think that's what we need. And that kind of goes to the culture change. That goes to him being able to kind of change what happens within the walls of this Raiders locker room and organization for the better. And so, no question, no doubt, he's going to be able to bring in some very credible names. I'm excited for that. So definitely got to give that a pro, that we're probably going to have one of the best coaching staffs we have seen. Now, the third pro is that we have three other well-respected head coaches in the AFC West: Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, obviously Andy Reid, and Pete Carroll throwing his name in there. I guarantee you, when Pete Carroll this morning was announced that he is the new head coach for Las Vegas Raiders, I guarantee you all three of those guys sat up in their seat real quick, because Pete Carroll just kind of demands that respect. You can question or debate just how much respect they do have for him, but and you can guarantee that they sat a little more upright this morning in their chair, because they now know they cannot sleep on this Raider team moving forward, especially if Pete Carroll can bring some credible coaches, veteran coaches on this staff that are well respected, and you create a coaching staff that they can compete at a very high level. You now have gotten the attentions of these other coaches in the AFC West. And let's be honest, we were the odd ones out. They all made the playoffs. We didn't. That's the goal. All right, baby steps, right? The goal is to make the playoffs. We have to improve. We got to see improvement. I think at the end of the day, these three AFC West coaches sat up in their chair a little more upright this morning, and they know that we're coming to get them. So you definitely got to chalk that up as a pro, without question. And my last pro is that if he can stick around for those 3, maybe even 4 years, all right, let's just, best case scenario, he does stick around for 3-4 years. That does give him plenty of time to, one, kind of change the culture and rebuild this roster in the way that he sees fit. But it also does give him plenty of time to prep his successor. Because imagine he does bring in a young mind, where there be a young offensive coordinator, and that offensive coordinator sits underneath him for those 3, maybe even 4 years, because that 4th year is an option. And so if that next young coach is ready to take that leap after 3 years, maybe he does step aside and then becomes maybe an advisor as opposed to an actual head coach or coach on the coaching staff. But if he can stick around for the 3-4 years and change this culture, which I think he can, then that does give him plenty of time to prep the next guy, Prep the guy that's going to continue on the success that he could potentially bring to our Las Vegas Raiders. So again, that's definitely a pro. If he can hang on for that long, the 3 to possibly 4 years, I think it definitely gives him time. And so I am excited. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely excited for this hire. I definitely have my question marks. And I think my question marks are bigger than the pros, but I hope he shocks us all. And a 74-year-old man can still stick around and coach this game at a high level at 77, 78 years old, which is crazy. But I'm definitely excited. Don't get me wrong. Let me know in the comment section down below. What are your pros? What are your pros to Pete Carroll being the next head coach for Las Vegas Raiders? And now I'm going to end you with this. Now, one thing that we can definitely all agree on is that he is basically a bridge coach, right? We are definitely prepping the next guy. And the thing is that I also think Pete Carroll, with all the coaches that were reported to actually be interested in the Las Vegas Raiders job, Pete Carroll was without question the best option, right? A lot of people threw out the names of Todd Monken, Liam Cohen now is with the Jags. It was reported he's going to be their next head coach. Mike McCarthy's name was out there. It was never reported that any of those names wanted to actually come and interview for the Raiders head coaching job. All right. So the only names out of the names that were reported that wanted to come in an interview, that did interview, I do think Pete Carroll, outside of Ben Johnson, obviously we swung and missed on that, but Pete Carroll was the next best option without questions for this job, and the Raiders did nail him. So you got to give credit where credit is due. Tombrady, Markdavis, you did get at least your second option. You got him in the building. He signed on the dotted line. We're ready to rock. And so you got to give credit to that. But I do think the coaches that wanted to actually be here and interview, we did get the best one. So you got to be excited about that. And so, guys, this is my initial reaction to the hiring of Pete Carroll as the next Las Vegas Raiders head coach at the age of 73, going to be 74 by the time kickoff happens for the 2025 season. But again, let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on it. Make sure you hit that notification bell because I am going to go live later today on Friday, but also on Sunday, kind of chop this thing up, talk more about the hiring of Pete Carroll, as well as some coaches and maybe even some players that we could bring in a free agency, as well as who we think we're going to possibly draft in the upcoming NFL draft. And so make sure you hit that notification bell. And again, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. My next giveaway is at 4,500 subscribers. So if you want to be including that, hit that subscribe button. But I appreciate you. I hope to see you guys in the lives later on this evening. But have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm out.